Hey, welcome. You've tuned into the Grow Wire podcast. I'm your host, Jason Maynard, and today's episode is with Legends and Losers podcast host and two-time author, Silicon Valley extraordinaire CMO, Christopher Lochhead. But before we get into all of that, today's episode is brought to you by Ring. If you don't know about Ring yet, and I'm pretty surprised if you didn't, but in case you haven't, you should. Ring is a product based on a simple principle using your home Wi-Fi network to create a ring of security around your entire house. So you get this app, it alerts you whenever somebody approaches your door and comes in the range of your security camera, and you can get like an HD video. And if somebody's trying to steal a package off your porch, like I actually had somebody try and steal something off my porch, and I was just hitting the button, screaming at them, "Get off my lawn!" And they dropped the package and ran away, and I didn't have to return it. And I can thank my good friends at Ring for making that totally possible. Anyway, I was able to secure from the masters of Ring a very special promotional offer for the Grow Wire listeners. Now you can get your hands on a Ring Video Doorbell 2 at a discounted price. Just go to www.ring.com and use the promo code GROW20RING at checkout for $20 off the Video Doorbell 2. You got to do it fast. This promotion only lasts through July 31st, so get on it and go to ring.com. Grow20Ring. Thank you. This episode is also sponsored by our friends at Blue Microphones. Everyone has a story to tell. I'm telling a story right now, right into a Blue microphone. And if you're a storyteller, you probably know Blue Mics for their iconic Yeti microphone. That has helped millions of people find and amplify their voice. So if you're thinking about recording or doing your own podcast like me, check out Blue's new Yeticaster, the complete mic and boom arm system, ready to connect to your laptop, bring the ultimate broadcast studio setup to your home or office. Visit bluedesigns.com and use podcast at checkout for a special price. The price is going to be discounted because you're a Grow Wire listener. How about that? I also want to make sure you head over to our Grow Wire blog at growwire.com. That's GROWWIRE.com. And you're going to find articles about growing your big ideas in your business. This week, we've got a feature story on the incredible female venture capitalists who made this year's Forbes Midas list. The article walks through how they grew their careers, which personality traits got them to the top of the list, how they made all that cash. And again, you can find that story on growwire.com. You'll also be able to catch the latest episode of the Grow Wire show. This is actually a YouTube show featuring the one and only Magic Johnson. Yep, we got Magic, the Laker legend, businessman extraordinaire, to discuss his transition from the court to the boardroom. You don't want to miss his timeless advice and insight. I think you're really going to like that one.
You're listening to the Grow Wire podcast, a place where you'll learn the ins and outs of growing a business, running a business, or even taking your big idea, career, or personal development to the next level. It's all possible. Our host, Jason Maynard, the SVP of Marketing at Oracle NetSuite and the Editor-in-Chief of GrowWire.com, will take you on an exploration of growth through candid conversations with some of the most brilliant minds in entrepreneurship, entertainment, business development, and more. Whatever your goal, we know you'll walk away with the right tools to help fuel your own personal journey of growth.
Today, we actually have two people joining us on the Grow Wire podcast. First, our Grow Wire show host, Kendall Fisher. She's on to discuss her interview with Magic Johnson, an exclusive sit-down interview with the Magic Man. And we also have former four-time Silicon Valley CMO, author, podcaster, Legends and Losers host, Christopher Lochhead, will be on to discuss growing a business using the principles of category design. Hey, Kendall, thank you for joining the show today. This is the first time we're talking about the Grow Wire show. Welcome aboard. It's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I feel like it's not been that long since I was on the last podcast, which was episode 0, and we mentioned the Grow Wire show.
That's true. So you came to the Grow Wire media empire from an interesting background in your own media world. Maybe tell folks a little bit about how you got here and what you were doing before, and then we'll go into the Grow Show.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I actually started off after I graduated from USC, fight on.
Right on.
I started off, I did Teach for America. And then after Teach for America, I knew I wanted to get into the entertainment industry. And that's when I actually became a ghost blogger for celebrities. And I'm not going to name names, but there's some that still have their blogs out today.
Well, you can't name names because it's ghost.
Right, exactly.
Is that what it means?
Yeah, so if I name names, it would ruin the secret that is a ghost blogger.
Exactly. You can never say that, right?
Right, exactly. So I was a ghost blogger for a year, and then I transitioned from that into doing social media management for another entertainment company, which was under Spin Media. It was celebbuzz.com. I also worked with Spin Magazine and Vibe Magazine. So I came from entertainment, and that's kind of how I got my foot into entertainment. And then I started actually writing for them full time instead of just social media and hosting. And I always like to say my first really big gig was at the MTV VMAs when Miley Cyrus twerked on Robin Thicke. And it was a big controversy. That
sounds like a big controversy.
So I was there.
Nobody got hurt, though.
No one got hurt, thank goodness. Maybe Miley Cyrus's dad, Billy Ray Cyrus's pride as a father.
His dream wasn't to see Miley twerking on...
I don't think so, on an older man. But so I was there for that. And then I got to go to Golden Globes, and I did a lot of interviewing and hosting through them. And then from there, I went to work as a writer and producer at E! News. So that was what I thought was going to be my end goal. I always wanted to work for E! News. And after being in entertainment for a total of about 5 years, 5.5 years, I realized entertainment just wasn't my calling. E! News is a great company, and I had so many mentors. Shout out to Romina Rosado, who's actually featured on growwire.com as one of our businesswomen. And she was just an amazing mentor, and I loved working for the company. I loved the people. I just realized entertainment wasn't my realm. So that brings us to where we are today, which is...
But you're still an entertainer, though.
Exactly. I love telling a good story. I love telling people's stories. And that's why I'm so happy here.
So what is this Grow Wire show going to look like for the audience? And we'll talk about magic, but just what's the concept behind this?
Yeah. So the Grow Wire show is diving into people, business people, athletes, anyone who has a super successful career or who has grown their big idea into something massively successful. It dives into the genesis of where, their life, their career, whatever it is, and goes into all of the challenges, the trials, the tribulations, their successes, celebrations, into how they became the person, company, brand, whatever it is they are today. So it's really cool because you get to tell these people or brands, companies' story and how hard all of the individuals who are part of it worked to make it something successful, which I love.
So what are the types of folks that are going to be on this show?
Well, other than Magic Johnson, that was a game changer for me. That was super awesome.
You can't give away all the guests, can you?
I won't give away all of them.
But what are the types of people? Who do you hope to have on?
Yeah. So, one of them that I'm really excited about is this rock band known as the Royal Machines.
Oh.
And they are a group of rock stars from all different corners of the world and different areas of the music industry. It's people like Mark McGrath from Sugar Ray, Dave Navarro, Chris Chaney from Jane's Addiction.
I hear Dave is shirtless in the episode. Is that true?
He is most definitely shirtless.
Oh, wow.
Yes. You guys don't want to miss that. But
wow.
These incredible people, and the Royal Machines story is all about how they came together to create this band. That's kind of another super successful venture outside of their already really successful careers. So that's an example. We'll be interviewing female entrepreneurs like Samantha Edis, who is an author and a CEO and an overall inspiration for women, and especially people in general who are trying to manage their businesses, overseeing a company, as well as overseeing their families, parenting, relationships, and their personal time. So there's so many different you go from a rock band to someone like Samantha Edis to a Magic Johnson to, let me throw out one more because he's been in the news recently, which is Dennis Rodman.
Oh,
Yeah. So you won't want to miss this. We have athletes, we have entrepreneurs,
you have diplomats, evidently.
Yeah, apparently. So yeah, a lot of really, really cool
Did you have to
things.
go to North Korea for that, or were you able to do it in closer to home?
Fortunately, I didn't have to go to North Korea. Thank you. I'm so glad that I was able to do it from actually Las Vegas.
It might be a tourist destination, though. It's sooner than we thought.
Yeah. Well, so good. If it is, great.
You might have to do a follow-up in North Korea.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so a few days ago, the episode with Magic came out. So tell us, what's it like to hang out with Magic Johnson?
When you just said that, I got the chills because, I mean, my dad is such a big Magic Johnson fan. I was a little too young, by the time he had retired from the NBA, but I knew all about him and just the way that my dad spoke of him, unlike any other basketball player, which was just like he thoroughly enjoyed the game. He loved the game. And that is just so evident when you're sitting next to him. It's not just basketball. He thoroughly enjoys life. He is so grateful for everything that he's done and everybody that he's been able to help and every single one of his, business ventures. And so he just emulate, is that the right word? He radiated positivity, and so
He shines.
Yeah, he really, in his smile, he's just a great guy. And, interviewing somebody with as big of a background as he has and a career that he has, it was such a lesson learned. He has so many bits of advice, so much insight, and to just really how to grow. I mean, he retired from the NBA under, pretty awful circumstances after he, announced that he tested positive for HIV. And so he came out of that, with the determination to do better in other places, and he certainly has.
Was there anything that surprised you about talking to him?
How down to earth he was.
Really?
And how, and just how he goes about, he's not an athlete who's attempting business. He's an athlete who's he's a businessman now. That's what he is.
He's
period.
a businessman.
Yeah, exactly. He's not, he was a former athlete, but he's a businessman. He knows what he's talking about.
That's cool.
Yeah.
We're going to hopefully have you on every time we got one of these grow shows coming out. So
Yeah.
we're going to get to hear a little bit more insight into sort of behind the camera.
Yeah.
Was there anything that, anything that during your time with him that just sort of you made you laugh, or you were like, wow, I was really surprised that this happened? Or
Well, he, at the end of our interview, he got up and he was like, can you just give me a hug? And I was like, what? And he hugged me and he was like, you're really good at this. And he was like, looked at the kind of production crew and was like, this girl's going to go places. And he's like, whoever raised her well, which was really, exciting for me because I always try to let my parents know that hey,
your dad was proud.
yeah, exactly. And my dad's such a Magic Johnson fan, like I said. So I was really, really excited to, that he had said that, and just that how he was complimenting me. He made it a point to be and then asked everybody in the room, including our production crew, everybody, hey, let's take a picture. They didn't ask, he asked them, hey, come on, take a picture with me. So I just thought that was really cool. And
He's a real guy.
yeah, he's a real dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, you got to go check this out on growwire.com. It's also on YouTube.
Yes, it'll be on YouTube, and that's actually where we will be posting episodes every other week. So twice a month. You guys are going to get a new Grow Wire Show episode.
All right, everybody. So Kendall Fisher, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
You're going to be back on in 2 weeks then, and we're going to hear about the next one.
There we go.
All right, that's the plan. Cool. Thank you very much. And now let's go on to my interview with Mr. Legend and Loser himself, Christopher Lochhead. Christopher, welcome to the Grow Wire podcast, man. Good to have you.
It's an absolute privilege to be here, Jason.
That's so fun to have you. So
It
you
is
and
fun
I
to
go
be here.
back many, many years.
More than
And
I want to admit.
More. And you obviously are the host of the Legends and Losers podcast. You wrote a best-selling book called Play Bigger. Rumor has it that you've got another book that's in the works.
Yes, sir.
But before we go into some of that cool stuff, I'd love for you to share with the audience your background, because you are Canadian. And so you're
Yes,
going to
I
say
am.
funny things on this podcast that are just going to sound different to us Americans. So tell us a little bit where you grew up. How'd you get started?
As a Canadian, we like to sit down on the couch.
The couch? Is there a process for that?
There is a process, and there's a it's sort of a riff on those old Jeff Foxworthy jokes. You might be a redneck, and so the joke goes like this: if you've ever said thank you to a bank machine, you might just be a Canadian. But I've lived in the Excited States, as you know, for over 20 years now, so my accent tends to come out after a beer or two.
So how'd you end up in Silicon Valley, coming from Montreal?
So I got thrown out of school at 18 for being stupid. It turns out if you get enough D's and F's, they don't let you back in the building. They don't want you to come back in? And I was working part-time as an orderly in a hospital. My mom had a job there, and she was kind enough to get me a job there. And so at the time, my options were, I could stay in the hospital and shave men's testicles for a living, or I could start a company. So me and my buddy, Jack, started a company at the dawn of the personal computer. And so for me, entrepreneurship, like a lot of entrepreneurs, was not really about a way up in life. It was a way out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did you start the company?
In Montreal.
Did you really?
Yeah. And we thought, I was 19 and he was 18. We figured nobody's going to buy from us. So we grew beards to try to look older. And then we made up a guise. So we named the company Roger Pierce et Associés, or Roger Pierce and Associates, to make it look like there was like this 55-year-old guy somewhere named Roger Pierce who was actually in charge, and we worked for him.
So what were you guys selling?
We were selling computer training and programming, custom programming. And it was back in the day when the personal computer was new, people were buying them. It was before local area networking, so it was SneakerNet. You had to bring this, the diskettes from, but people were buying WordPerfect and Lotus and DBase, and all that stuff was popular, but didn't know how to use them. So we would build custom programs, we would do training for them and things along those lines.
What did you guys know about doing this?
Well, I didn't know anything about anything. I didn't know how to tie a tie. I wanted to be a rock star. But my friend Jack had gone to work for a small software startup in Montreal, and he was much more technical than I was. So he said, look, I'll deal with the technical stuff, you deal with the sales and marketing stuff, and maybe we can have something here.
So how do you end up doing that in Montreal and then moving to Silicon Valley? What's that like?
Roger Pierce failed. So after 3 years, we just wrapped the Shelby Cobra around a Mustang, or around a lamppost rather, around a Mustang, yeah. Smashed the Cobra into the Mustang. And I ended up having to get a job. It was a recession in Montreal, so I went to go work at another startup, doing sales and marketing, software company. And ultimately, I ended up in Toronto and started another company. And that company got acquired by a Silicon Valley-based software company called Vantiv in 1996. And
oh, wow.
I never looked back. And so at 27, 28 years old, I was the head of marketing for a publicly traded CRM software company.
And Vantiv was one of the big pioneers back in the day when customer relationship management was just starting.
Yeah, before Siebel beat us. And then, of course, the Salesforce guys showed up and the NetSuite guys showed up. And yeah, but in the very early pioneering days of CRM.
That's wild. So I've seen this sort of process with a lot of folks before. You do one thing in Silicon Valley, and then you go on and you sort of take your learnings from, one failed startup or one company, and then you go try something new. You went to a company called Scient.
Yeah.
Which was trying to do some really interesting things right around the dot-com boom time.
Yeah.
Talk about what was going on at Scient, because I think that story of its own, you could probably write a book.
Yeah, well, if you consider the simple fact that we started the company in 97, we were public by 99 with 2,000 people and a market cap of $7 billion. And then by 2001, it was all over. So, we were a services company, so we were essentially building websites and digital strategies for companies, startups, big companies, everybody in between. We grew like crazy. And then at the end of 2000, heading into 2001, it was incredible. We had clients who were spending $3 million a month in August and September, and by October and November, they were spending $0.
Wow.
It was that dramatic.
What did Scient get you in revenue at the peak?
Oh, that's a great question. I think we were about $9 billion in market cap, and probably would have been over $200 million.
That's a crazy number.
Yeah, it's a crazy number.
So Scient goes bust,
yeah.
like a lot of things. What'd you do next? Where'd you go?
Licked my wounds.
Licked your wounds.
Yeah, I took about a year off trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And then I did a little bit of consulting and so forth. And then ultimately, I ended up at Mercury Interactive as the head of marketing.
So Mercury, and I met Chris when he was at Mercury.
Yeah.
And Mercury obviously turned out to be one of the most, amazing turnaround stories. But even before the turnaround, built and defined a new marketplace that really hadn't existed before. But I'm curious, so what did you learn from your failures at your first couple startups, and even Scient? Because that was actually that left a big mark in the ground.
Yeah, it's crazy because it was a giant success and then it was a giant failure in such a short period of time. Well, I learned a lot, but from a life perspective, and this is sort of how we got to the name of Legends and Losers, that sometimes you're a legend and sometimes you're a loser, and sometimes that you are that in the same day.
Yeah.
Right? And the funny thing is the world treats you differently. When you're in my case, the head of marketing of this high-flying company and you're on the cover of these magazines and all that stuff, the world is your oyster. And then you can't get arrested in Times Square, right? And that happens at light speed. And so on a personal level, I learned not to take all of that stuff seriously. I learned it's about the work, it's about the people that you're with, it's about, are you making a difference in the world, are you doing things you enjoy? Those things really, really matter. And sometimes you have success and sometimes you don't, and not to take either of it that seriously. Because, when you own the success, you can become a really quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I know a lot of people in Silicon Valley we don't want to spend 5 seconds with. And then when you lose, I think, you and I are the same. I think a lot of super competitive people are the same. You're kind of throwing up in the backyard and, you're physically sick over it, right? And it's incredibly upsetting. But over time, what I learned is to just sort of smooth that out a little bit. You're going to be a hero. You're going to be a bum. And when you're at the top of the mountain, you will get knocked off. And then, if you have some tenacity, you'll get back to the top of the mountain again. So I've learned to love sort of the whole thing. And sort of the big aha is that the destination is the journey. The point is to do work that you love with people that you love, trying to build great technology, trying to build great new categories, ideally making a difference in the world. And so, and today where I am now, Jace, it sounds corny. I know it sounds like a stupid meme or something. But the destination is the journey. It's about doing the work. It's about, for me, writing and doing Legends and Losers and working with a few entrepreneurs, obviously working with you guys. That's a joy. So the privilege is that you get to do it.
Yeah. Well, you get to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
That may be the greatest gift or privilege that anybody actually has.
Yes.
Is that they can actually make choices and getting to do what they want to do for work and for fun. And hopefully those two things aren't that different, right, in terms of the time spent.
For me, they're the same now. I don't delineate between work and life. It's just all life. Yeah.
So let's go back to Mercury, though, because I know that story well, and it was it was a sleepy little company in, arguably one of the most boring parts of town.
Yeah.
Nobody ever got excited about testing and things like that, but you guys turned it into actually something much bigger.
You didn't think QA was sexy, Jason?
QA was just not on the top 10 list of places you wanted to go on a Friday night. But I remain impressed with what you build, not because of the hype or any of that came with this. You guys actually built a lot of value and ultimately sold the company. But walk people through that story, because I think it's one of those lessons learned from a few years ago that have a lot of applicability today.
Well, Mercury was a really great company when I joined it. So it was about a $3.5 or maybe $400 million company in the early 2000s, and founded by Israelis in Tel Aviv. And like a lot of Israeli tech companies, a really smart model where the bulk of engineering was done in Israel, and then the bulk of kind of executive management and sales and marketing and those things were in California. And it was a good way to build a business, and had become the dominant player in software quality testing. And there comes a time in every person's life and every company's life where they realize their current position is their biggest barrier to growth.
Yeah.
And so at the time, Amnon Landon, a very smart guy who was the CEO of the company, said, the great news is we're the kings of testing. The bad news is we're the king of testing, and we have ambitions much bigger than that. And so how do we create an agenda that matters? And also, how do we reposition ourselves as something much bigger when the world sees us in this tiny niche? And so that was the challenge at the time.
So where did you end up? Where did you take the company?
Well, you mean in terms of how the movie ended, or
no,
the process?
No, in terms of the process to take it to a bigger and better place.
So what we started to look at was the role of quality in the life of technology inside a company. And here was the aha that we had. Most transaction-oriented business processes at the time were being automated, right? And today, many non-transaction business processes are automated as well, of course. And so, if you will, the aha it was that the lifeblood of the company flows through important technology applications, right? Accounting, manufacturing, NetSuite being a prime example.
Yep.
And so the quality of your applications is really the quality of your business, right? Because if you can't close your books on time, if you can't take orders, if you can't, et cetera, then you're going to fail in your business. And so the aha was around that. And then if we were the company that essentially assured that your key business processes in your key applications, like NetSuite, were highly available, high quality, and if you're a retailer and you need to super perform because Christmas is coming or Mother's Day is coming or whatever it is, that you can perform at the level that you want. And so that was the aha. And then the second aha was, at that point in history, the technology organization had really been a big part of re-engineering and automating virtually every other part of the enterprise except itself. And so there was this idea we came up with where we said you have to run IT like a business. So those were the two big ideas, that the quality of the applications were the quality of your business, and that inside the information technology function, you had to do to yourself what you'd done everywhere else and transform the IT organization. And so we came up with this idea, we called it business technology optimization, that allowed you to run IT like a business to deliver highly functioning business applications to produce business outcomes in your, if you will, real business.
Yeah. So you created a new category called BTO, right? And changed the rules of the game for a lot of folks that you were competing with. In a very evil and market destructive disruption type of way.
I like to do marketing that causes emergency board meetings at the competition.
So what happened when, not so much with the external competition, but what happened when you started going out into the field and talking to CIOs and CXOs and actually testing this idea and then bringing the product behind it? How'd they respond to this?
Really well. And some of them didn't get it at first because it was fairly forward-leaning at the time. Doesn't sound very forward-leaning today, but it was more forward-leaning back then. And we looked for that 30% or so of the category that it would resonate with, that were sort of more visionary leaders who said, yes, I want to run IT like a business, and yes, I realize that my job is to deliver mission-critical business applications that the CEO and the executive team could trust.
Yeah.
And so we found those CIOs. Some of them were already customers. We were expanding our product line. We started to do acquisitions. But we went on really what you and I would call an evangelism kind of a mission. And we evangelized to customers and to the media and to analysts and to Wall Street analysts and obviously the press and the like, to sort of share this vision that the way IT worked was broken, and that if you fixed IT, you could fix the deliverable of IT, which was an automated business process, and those things went hand in glove.
Well, what's interesting about this, without stealing your punchline to your joke here, is that people begin to take notice.
Yes.
Right. And
you could steal any punchline of mine.
Well, no, I mean, but I think it was amazing. A sleepy little testing and, QA company all of a sudden is having arguably the most important IT conversation at the board level you could possibly have.
That was our goal, and was to catch, at the time, thought leaders like IBM and HP and some of the big consulting firms and all those folks off guard, because we saw missing agenda. And one of my favorite expressions, Jace, is it takes courage to be legendary. Who at the time was this $300, $400 million company proclaiming that it had the strategic agenda for technology inside businesses? But, it took some serious, let's call it moxie, to get that done. Yeah. But to your point, we did it with conviction. There was real substance behind it. The good news is the company had a long track record of delivering. And so people listened.
They believed you.
Yeah. And it worked.
Yeah.
And we delivered it.
And it was an authentic story.
Yeah.
It wasn't a 3-letter acronym hype bomb that you dropped in. It was a real thing.
And look, in full candor, it was a stretch for the company when we first announced it. We were, if you will, as a skier, we were very forward on our skis. And so there is a little bit of a joke about, we launched BTO and then flew to Israel and told the engineers to build it, which is not exactly true. But you know what that's like,
close
right?
enough.
Yeah, it's, you need to catch up your reality to your vision. And customers aren't stupid. They understood that, right? And we tried to create our vision's out here in the future, and here's our roadmap to get there. And they had to have some belief around that. So yes, we had a lot of filling in to do on the product side, but we did have a vision, and we did believe in it. And we thought it was really important. The day we sold the company, there were a lot of people who cried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had the company on a mission.
Yeah, a very real mission we all believed in, we all cared deeply about. It wasn't bullshit. It wasn't just some, marketing story to rev up the troops or anything like that. It was important to us.
If you've ever met a famous athlete at a corporate event or gotten an official autograph, chances are Steiner Sports made it happen. Here's Brandon Steiner.
We believe that there's magic in the moments that sports creates. We get customers closer to the game and help companies use the power of sports to grow their business. We've been in business 30 years, and we've had multiple systems to keep track of all the athletes and all of our customers. Multiple systems means multiple headaches. So we made the move to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite lets us replace all of our finance, inventory, and CRM functions with one convenient system. Now all the departments can see the same data. And if I have a question about our business, I can get the answer quickly.
Find out how Steiner Sports scaled their business to millions of customers. Go to netsuite.com/Steiner. You'll also get our free guide titled Overcoming Your 5 Obstacles to Growth. That's netsuite.com/Steiner for our free guide and the story of a great American company.
So HP acquires Mercury. You stick around for a little while and then retire.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. So I'm sure some folks on the podcast have read your book, Play Bigger. What prompts you to go from being, big time Silicon Valley CMO to now you want to write a book about what you did? Why didn't you just go do another one?
So what I did in between was I ran away. I moved to Tahoe. I got a divorce. At the time I was 38 years old. I'd worked nonstop for 20 years because I started when I was 18. I was completely burned out. The end at Mercury was trying.
Yeah.
I'd gone through a divorce. That was very challenging. It's funny how life is where everything can hit at the same time. And so I ran away to Lake Tahoe to become a ski bum, which was kind of always a dream of mine. And I had a great time doing that. But, and it's a big but, business is the thing I do. Right. And so I'm never going to be the skier or the surfer that I am, the entrepreneur and the marketing guy that I am. And so we all get personal satisfaction out of the thing that we're good at, point A. And point B, look, Silicon Valley, technology, new categories, new companies, it's exciting stuff. And so after several years of mostly skiing, I started to do more and more, as advising and kind of board work and that kind of stuff. And although I didn't want to go back and be an operating executive again, my heart's in the technology. And so, I started to do more of that. And then getting to your question around the book, I never thought I had a book in me. I'm dyslexic. Reading's hard enough for me, never mind writing. I had been doing some writing. Dan Farber, who was the head of CBSNews.com at the time, asked me to write a regular blog for them. And he said, you can write anything you want. And I said, anything? And he said, anything. And he let me write some pretty wild stuff. And they published it. And so that sort of got me thinking. And then a dear friend of mine named Peggy Burke, who runs 1185 Design, one of the top branding firms in Silicon Valley, sat me down and said, Christopher, you got to write this book. And I finally listened. And I was also lucky enough to be working with two other guys, Dave Peterson and Al Ramadan. and they got fired up about the idea, and I thought collaborating on it would be great. And then we brought in a fourth guy who was a professional writer, a New York Times bestseller, Kevin Maney, who I think is an absolute genius. And it sounds crazy that you get 4 people together to write a book and have it turn out anything other than a piece of crap. But it really worked. We had great chemistry, and it was one of the most amazing things I was ever part of. And interestingly enough, when we handed in the manuscript, it was a big bummer. It was sad that it was over, and most people kind of talk about writing a book as, not so much fun.
But it was the journey.
It was the journey. We had a great time. We really did, and we got to flesh out the ideas, and you contributed a lot, and we wrote the book with so many smart people. We were testing ideas and theories all the time. We were doing primary research that was very cool, and we just had fun. We did it at my house, 2 blocks from the beach. We would get together for 2 or 3 days. We'd work for a few hours. We'd go for a bike ride. We'd go for a surf. We'd have a burrito. We'd have a beer. We made it fun.
Like you made an album.
Yeah, it was kind of like making a record.
Well, and it's funny, reading Play Bigger and knowing you from when you started the book to when you finished. I found in that book so many things that crystallized ideas or partial ideas, and I'd never had anybody sort of put them together for me. And if you haven't read the book, you should go definitely read the book. It's fantastic and it's amazing. But to me, it was really interesting. And hearing your journey between failing at a couple startups, right, having a couple good outcomes, and having the last one with Mercury go up and then down and then back up again, and going through that, I felt all of that through your book. And in a lot of ways, you've created a new category for how people should think about categories.
Yeah, and it's funny, we sort of say it in the book. So we introduced this concept, as you know, called category design, and the thinking is that just like you can design a company, just like you can design a product, you can actually design the way a market category works. And so if you say, a high-end pair of sunglasses can cost as much as $400, and yet you can go into Costco and buy a flat-screen TV for $150. You go, one of them talks to satellites in space, and one of them's a piece of plastic on your face, right? On its surface, you'd think the one that talks to satellites is the $400 one, and the one, but it's the opposite. And so the aha is every product lives in a market category. And when you unpack, okay, well, what is a market? What is a category? It's really a way of thinking about a problem and a solution and the value associated with solving that problem. And so it turns out when you unpack in business, there's some people who deliberately design that. And there's some people for whom it happens accidentally. So we wanted to study the greats to find out what they did intuitively that was fundamentally different than what most people think of as marketing to create the context for their success. If you think about it in a sales perspective, it'd be like writing the RFP for your space. How do you do that? And, I'd spent my whole career trying to design categories. And so, we forced ourselves through the process of writing it all out, our experiences, as well as, studying the experiences and the data of many of the greats and doing some primary data science research.
What surprised you about when you did the research on category design?
What surprised me was how intentional so many entrepreneurs were about it, even if, to your point, Jace, they didn't have the words. So one of the examples that Kevin came up with that I just love him for was Clarence Birdseye, the creator of the frozen food category. And, categories are everywhere, but we don't think about them, right? And so before Clarence, there was food, and then there was canned food. And he had this aha, I could take you through the story if you like, but that there should be frozen food. And he sets the entire industry up, from getting the train companies to get special refrigeration cars, to convincing grocery stores to invest in refrigerators, and then ultimately, of course, the big one, convincing consumers that frozen food matters. Now, you could say today, well, wouldn't that be intuitively obvious? Well, it wasn't at the time. And so category designers take things that are obvious to them but not to the world, and ultimately teach the world to think about a problem and a solution in a particular way. And so I guess to answer your question fully, most great entrepreneurs are category designers, and they don't even realize that that's what they're doing. They're teaching the world to think the way they want them to, and therefore to distinguish themselves, to create their own niche, and for people to value it in the way they value it.
I think you have a line in this book. If not, I'm going to attribute it to you. But you talk about falling in love with the problem you're solving.
Yes.
Right. And that really resonates to me as a marketer and really kind of in anything that you're thinking about trying to come up with a new idea for. So what does it mean to you when you say fall in love with the problem you're solving?
So I'll give you a great example that's in our new book, Niche Down. The company's called Gojo Industries.
Okay. What is a Gojo?
It's the abbreviation of the husband and the wife's name. And the company's been around since the early 1920s, I believe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And here was the aha. The husband and wife, the wife has got some kind of a factory job. And at the end of the day, she goes to wash her hands, and she can't get her hands properly washed. And there's a bar of soap, and it's disgusting. It's got hair on it, and it's horrible, right? And so she says to her husband, like, to quote the Big Lebowski, "This aggression will not stand, man." Like this. And so they go to work. And the husband comes up with a formula for a new category of soap that today is called liquid soap. So up to then, there was the category was bar soap.
Got it.
So they come up, they become the category kings and queens of that new niche that they create. Now, most entrepreneurs, when they do that, they declare victory. They, in our book, we've found that on average, they take 76% of all the economics in the space that they design.
Yep.
So 2/3 go to one, and everyone else kind of gets, a hard time of it. But to get to your question, they never stop thinking about the problem.
Yeah.
And so guess what happened? And the company gets sold and bought, but the family ultimately gets it back and takes it private. And then, if I'm remembering the date right, it's 1996. They reimagine the problem again, and they introduce to the world a new product called Purell. And they declare a problem called hand sanitizing.
Yeah.
You need to not just wash your hands, you need to sanitize them.
Of course you do.
And sometimes you can't get to the bathroom or a sink or whatever. And so, many, many decades later, they reimagine the problem in the context of what is made possible by new technology. And today, the U.S. military is one of their biggest customers. So it's not just, people who go into a hospital, and it's not just, I know some moms that they want to bathe their children in this stuff, right? Does your wife?
I know one of those.
You know one of those. And by the way, men do it too, so I'm not,
You can't walk into a grocery store on the west side of Los Angeles without getting sanitized.
Disgusting.
Yes.
It's disgusting. You wouldn't walk into a grocery store, Mr. Maynard, with those hands, right? Well, that's Gojo Industries.
Oh, wow.
So by being obsessed with the problem and not just the solution, I'm sure they're obsessed with the solution because they make great products.
Yeah.
But most of us are focused on the product.
So
when they continue to reimagine the problem, but bang, new category after new category.
See, this is where you get into something, and I think this is probably, to me, one of the most controversial parts of your book. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs resonated with it, but there's an interesting camp of folks who don't like the book, right? And they're the ones who I think you describe as worshiping at the altar of product.
Yes.
Right? And they think product supremacy is the only thing that matters, nothing else. I'm curious, how do you sort of reconcile some of that criticism from folks who say, hey, category design is interesting and it's neat, but ultimately, if the Zune was just a little bit better, they would have won?
Yeah. So before I say what I'm going to say, I want to be clear. I love great products. I consider myself in my head a product guy. Yeah. I spent lots of time with our, et cetera, right? And we all love great products. In a lot of ways, category design for me personally came about because I loved great products. Because many great products never see the light of day because they fail to make their place in the world. And so I think it's a tragedy when incredible products, incredible services, incredible new technologies go nowhere. So, a simple example. Google has an amazing product called Google Docs. Its competitor is, I'll get the prices a little bit wrong, but approximately $250 a year, and it's free. And its competitor has over 90% market share and is one of the greatest franchises in history. As a matter of fact, we just had Mike Maples Sr., who was the president of Microsoft, and he was one of the principal architects of what today is Microsoft Office. So if you look at it and you say, wait a minute, most people or many people would say Google Docs is a better product than Office, and it's free. So you think, well, Microsoft Office is finished. 90 plus market share, 30 years into the game.
Yeah.
And so products, like people, have to either find or make their place in the world. Category design is about proactively making that place. And so if you're a product person who thinks this is kind of like marketing fluff stuff, well, if you want your product to thrive, you need to become known for a niche that you own. I would posit that every product or service that you and I love, and I would say even many of the people that you and I admire and respect the most in the world, are original. They're different. And over time, they become known for a niche that they own. They dominate a space.
Yep.
They become synonymous with that space. And so if you're a product person, wouldn't you want to ultimately achieve that? So I think it's very complementary. And look, we say it in the book, you got to get company, product, and category right. All three are critically important. The one thing I would say, however, category is the only true single point of failure. No market,
Yeah.
nobody buying your stuff.
Yeah, and that's the magic triangle that you talk about. You got to get all three right to win.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. So, last thing I wanted to ask you, Play Bigger is all about companies taking off and dominating the landscape and going public, and you did a bunch of great research on it. It's amazing. But what's fascinating to me is your latest project that you've been teasing out is the opposite of that. So, talk to us about this new concept, because you're doing something radically different than what you did before.
Yeah, it's a 180 in a lot of ways. So Play Bigger came out in mid 2016. And ever since then, the number one question I've gotten is, how does this concept of category design apply to me in my career personally?
Yep.
Because we talk about it a little bit in the book. Mm-hmm. And how does it apply to what I lovingly refer to as small E entrepreneurs? So I define a big E entrepreneur as you go to Silicon Valley, you raise $200 million with top-tier venture capitalists, you're trying to build the next Facebook, Google, et cetera, et cetera. And God bless you, that's where I spent most of my life.
Yep.
But in a lot of ways, my heart is with what you could think of as small E entrepreneurs.
Your first business.
That's where I grew up.
Yeah.
No money, no education, no relationships, no nothing.
You're
Okay,
winging
let's
it.
go for it,
Yeah.
right? I love those people.
Yeah.
And it turns out they're the backbone of the United States, of our economy. Over 60% of people who work in our country work for a business of less than 500 people. Virtually all the new patents and therefore much of the new innovation comes from those companies. And in a lot of cases, those are the companies that are sponsoring our kids' basketball teams and baseball teams, and they're the neighborhood businesses that we love. And so that was the big question. And so Niche Down is all about how you can become legendary by being different in your career or as a small E entrepreneur.
So is it the concept of category design and quote unquote playing bigger, but in a
micro niche.
In a micro niche.
So can I give you an example?
Yeah, give me an example. This is interesting.
Here's one of my current favorites. So as a side project, one of the things that my wife, Carrie, does is every couple years she builds a house for resale. And she's incredibly talented at it. While we're working on Niche Down, she's building a house. And she wants these super ding-dong, very nice cabinets and all this stuff, but doesn't fit the budget. So she goes to work. She's incredibly industrious. She finds a company in Southern California, in Duarte, California, called Semi Handmade. The company is started by a guy named John. You'll forgive me forgetting his name. He's coming on Legends and Losers. Okay. I'll tell you all about him. So here's the aha. He's a I think he was a screenwriter. He's working in Hollywood, whatever. He decides he's going to go and work in cabinetry. And he goes to work in that field, and he ultimately has this aha. I'm going to take IKEA furniture, and I'm going to put an incredible front end on it. So what you do if you want to go build a house is you buy IKEA stuff, cabinets or whatever, and it's very functional, very practical, good quality, but it doesn't look super ding dong, or it doesn't fit with the whatever vibe you're trying to create, whatever it is, right? Well, he does the super ding dong front end to their back end. So you can have a high end custom look to your house with IKEA furniture for a fraction of the cost of custom high end furniture. And his business is on fire. He's an Inc. 500 company. And so that's a great example of a niche down. It's a micro niche. He designs the niche himself. He today dominates it. He's still a small growing business. He's not the next Facebook, but he owns a niche and he's crushing it, and it's awesome.
That's a great story. No, that's cool. So this is going to be a book.
Yeah, the new book is called Niche Down. It comes out in July of 2018. I'm co-authoring it with my dear friend Heather Clancy, who you know, and all of the examples all of the tools are focused on those kinds of businesses, as well as your career. If you look at it, what separates Picasso is not the quality of his brushmanship or whatever I'm not a painter, what do I know? He's a category designer. He creates a whole new genre of painting called cubism. And that's ultimately what makes him successful, not that he can paint pretty landscapes. Yeah. And so if you're a painter, the question I have for you is, who do you want to be, the 47th Cubist artist or Picasso? And so for us on an individual level, we also have to carve out a niche that we can become known for. And so the book's all about how to do that, and it's full of examples of individuals and growth-oriented companies, small entrepreneurs who do that.
I'm looking forward to reading this. I know it's going to be great, and I love the idea of taking these big ideas and bringing it to sort of something that's happening every day. So we unfortunately have to go. Chris is going to be back on, though, many times over the coming weeks and months. He'll be on the quick line to talk about all sorts of stuff. And then when the book's out, we're definitely going to have to come in and dive into a deep understanding of Niche Down. So
thank you.
Thanks, man, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason.
All righty. Take care. Thanks,
brother.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning into the Grow Wire podcast. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on Apple's iTunes podcast thingy and SoundCloud, evidently. We're in 2 places. I only thought we were going to be in 1, but we're in 2. That's pretty cool. And don't forget to go check us out on YouTube. That's where you're going to see the Grow Wire show. You'll see Magic Johnson. It's pretty cool. Click a subscribe button there if you don't mind while you're at it. And then I also want to give a special thanks to everyone who participated in today's episode. Obviously, Mr. Christopher Lochhead, our Grow Wire host, Kendall Fisher, Magic Johnson, being on the Grow Wire show and being part of this as well, our production and editing team over at Lampstand TV. Thanks, Lampstanders. Susie Strutner and Kylie Singh from Grow Wire. Thank you guys so much for all your work. And last but not least, we want to give a big thank you to our sponsors, Ring, Blue Microphones, and Steiner Sports. Adios, everybody. Thank you.
You just listened to the Grow Wire podcast with host Jason Maynard. Make sure to tune in every week for another episode full of tips, tools, and strategies to take your personal and professional growth to the next level. Until next time.